A figure emerged from the shadows, and Voller tensed, reaching for her pistol. But it was Jeremy, looking haggard and wary. "You better have a damn good reason for dragging me out here," he growled, eyeing Voller suspiciously. Voller deactivated her cloak, and Jeremy recoiled at the sight of her alien features. "I assure you, Mr. Allen, the reason is of the utmost importance," Voller said, her voice buzzing through her translator implant. "The fate of your species, and indeed the entire galaxy, hangs in the balance." "It is," Voller said grimly, "and we must act quickly. There are forces at work here, Mr. Allen, forces that will stop at nothing to keep this secret buried." Voller brought up a holographic display of a shadowy figure. "This man is Marcus Thompson, a low-level operative for a clandestine organization known as the Prometheus Group. My research indicates that this group may be at the center of the anomalies I've discovered. We need to find Thompson and extract what he knows." Using Jeremy's contacts and Voller's advanced surveillance tech, they managed to arrange a meeting with Thompson in a seedy dive bar. The man was a nervous wreck, fidgeting and sweating as Voller and Jeremy pressed him for information. "I don't know much," Thompson insisted, his eyes darting around the bar. "I'm just a cog in the machine, you know? But there's something big happening, something that goes way above my pay grade. I've heard whispers about some kind of entity, something ancient and powerful that's pulling the strings behind the scenes." Just as Thompson was about to reveal more, the bar erupted into chaos. A team of heavily armed mercenaries burst in, weapons blazing. Thompson caught a spray of bullets in the chest and crumpled to the floor, blood pooling around his body. Voller and Jeremy dove for cover, barely avoiding the hail of gunfire. Voller returned fire with her plasma pistol, the searing bolts cutting through the mercenary's armor smoothly. Jeremy grabbed a fallen mercenary's rifle and laid down suppressing fire, giving Voller a chance to flank their attackers. Voller nodded, her compound eyes glinting with persistence. "And we will, Mr. Allen, at any expense." As Voller and Jeremy prepared to embark on their quest for the Neurogate, they both knew that the odds were stacked against them. The Prometheus Group had eyes and ears everywhere, and the true extent of the Vortex's infiltration was still unknown. They were walking into a hornet's nest of danger and deception, with the fate of humanity and the galaxy itself hanging in the balance. But they had no choice. The truth had to be revealed, no matter the consequences. Voller and Jeremy were the only ones who could stop the vortex before it was too late, and so, with grim commitment, they set out to unravel the mystery and save their respective species from an unthinkable fate. The hunt for the Neurogate had begun. "The Andes," Jeremy muttered. "A secret Prometheus facility disguised as an abandoned mine. It's our best lead on the Neurogate." Voller nodded, her compound eyes reflecting the holographic display. "We must move quickly. The Prometheus Group will not cease their pursuit." They gathered what supplies they could and boarded a rickety cargo shuttle bound for South America. The journey was tense, every shadow a potential threat. Upon reaching the Andes, they trekked through treacherous mountain passes, the thin air burning their lungs. Finally, they crested a ridge and saw it, a sprawling complex nestled in a valley, camouflaged to blend with the surrounding rock. Voller's antennae twitched as she scanned for security measures. "There," she whispered, pointing to a narrow maintenance tunnel. "Our way in." They slipped past the perimeter, Jeremy's heart pounding as they narrowly avoided patrolling guards. Inside, the facility was a maze of sterile corridors and locked doors. Voller's hacking skills proved invaluable as they made their way deeper into the compound. In a vast laboratory, they found row upon row of stasis pods, each containing a human subject. Voller's mandibles quivered with revulsion as she examined the medical readouts. "They're experimenting on them," she hissed, attempting to enhance the vortex's control. Jeremy's face paled as he scrolled through files on a nearby terminal. "My God, the vortex. It's not just some shadowy organization, it's an entity, an ancient parasitic being from another dimension." "The Neurogate," Jeremy said, studying a heavily encrypted file. "It's our only hope of disrupting the vortex's influence. But it's not here. It's under the Great Sphinx?" Jeremy raised an eyebrow. "You know someone?" Volar's mandibles tightened. My brother, Zoran, a xenoarchaeologist. We have not spoken in years, but he may be our only chance. As they prepared to leave with their newfound intelligence, alarms blared throughout the facility. A voice crackled over the intercom. Intruders detected in Sector 7. All security personnel converge. They ran, plasma bolts sizzling past their heads as guards flooded the corridors. They ducked and weaved, Volar's alien agility and Jeremy's human tenacity, keeping them just ahead of their pursuers. They burst through an emergency exit only to find themselves face to face with a tall, imposing human, flanked by heavily armed security. Professor Volar, Mr. Allen, the man said, his voice smooth and cold. I'm Damian Blackwood. I must commend you on your persistence, but I'm afraid your little adventure ends here. Volar's hand inched towards her plasma pistol. Blackwood smirked. Now, let's not be hasty. I'm here to offer you a choice. Join us. Help the Vortex achieve its goals. I assure you the rewards will be substantial. In an instant, the air was filled with plasma fire. Volar and Jeremy dove for cover, returning fire as best they could. The battle was fierce, but short. Volar's quick thinking and Jeremy's unexpected marksmanship gave them the edge they needed. As they sprinted for their escape vehicle, Blackwood's voice rang out behind them. This isn't over! We'll hunt you to the ends of the earth! As their ship streaked across the sky towards Egypt, Volar and Jeremy knew that the true test was yet to come. The Neurogate was within reach, but so too were the forces of the Vortex. And somewhere in the shadows, Damian Blackwood was plotting his revenge. The Great Sphinx loomed before them, its weathered visage a silent sentinel guarding ancient secrets. Volar's antennae twitched as she scanned the area for threats, while Jeremy kept watch, his stolen rifle at the ready. Zoran, Volar's brother, muttered to himself as he pored over the data they'd stolen from the Prometheus facility. As they approached, the stones shimmered and parted, revealing a dark passage. Volar's compound eyes gleamed in the darkness as they descended into the earth, the air growing thick with the dust of millennia. The tunnel opened into a vast chamber, its walls covered in intricate glyphs that seemed to shift and change as they looked at them. Zoran's eyes widened with recognition. By the stars, he breathed. These markings, they're Aurelian. Jeremy frowned. Aurelian? As they ventured deeper, they encountered a series of deadly traps. Laser grids, gravity wells, and temporal distortions barred their path. Volar's quick reflexes and Jeremy's human intuition proved invaluable as they navigated the gauntlet of alien defenses. Finally, they reached the central vault. A massive door stood before them, covered in swirling, fractal patterns that hurt the eyes to look at directly. Zoran approached, his hands moving over the strange lock mechanism with practiced ease. It's a quantum cipher, he muttered. Designed to... Yes, there. The air erupted with plasma fire. Volar spun around, her pistol already drawn, to see Damian Blackwood and a squad of heavily armed mercenaries pouring into the chamber. Chaos erupted. Jeremy caught a plasma bolt in the shoulder, crying out in pain as he stumbled back against the Neurogate. His hand brushed against its surface, and suddenly the obelisk thrummed to life. A wave of invisible energy pulsed outward, washing over everyone in the chamber. Volar watched in horror as the mercenaries collapsed, their bodies going limp. Jeremy's eyes rolled back in his head as he slumped to the ground. But Damian Blackwood remained standing. His eyes blazed with an eerie crimson light as he turned to face Volar and Zoran. As Blackwood spoke, more mercenaries entered the chamber, their eyes glowing with the same crimson light. They roughly seized Volar and Zoran, binding their limbs with energy restraints. The Prometheus group has been our instrument, Blackwood continued, preparing Earth for the rebirth of the Archon legions. And now, thanks to you, that day has finally arrived. Volar struggled against her bonds as she and Zoran were dragged from the chamber. She caught a glimpse of Jeremy's unconscious form being carried by two crimson-eyed soldiers. They emerged from the Sphinx to find a massive ship hovering overhead, its sleek design unlike anything Volar had ever seen. As they were transported aboard, Blackwood turned to Volar, his eyes burning with malevolent purpose. Your expertise will be invaluable, Professor, he said. There is still much Aurelian technology to reactivate, and your friend here, he gestured to Jeremy's limp form, will ensure your cooperation. The ship's engines roared to life as it ascended into the atmosphere. Volar's mind raced, desperately searching for a way out of this nightmare. As Earth shrank beneath them, she realized the true scale of the threat they faced. The Archons were poised to unleash a wave of machine assimilation across the galaxy, and she was now their unwilling accomplice. As the ship accelerated towards its unknown destination, Volar knew she had to find a way to break free, rescue Jeremy and Zoran, and warn the galaxy of the impending apocalypse. The fate of all biological life now rested on her chitinous shoulders. Volar's antenna drooped as the Archon ship entered lunar orbit. Through a viewport, she watched Earth shrink to a blue marble, her heart heavy with the knowledge of the threat looming over her adopted home. Before them stood a massive structure, its architecture a blend of smooth curves and jagged angles that hurt the eyes to look at directly. Blackwood strode forward, his boots leaving perfect imprints in the gray dust. "Welcome to the future," he said, his voice distorted through the communication link in their helmets. Inside, the facility hummed with dormant energy. Volar's compound eyes widened as she took in the rows upon rows of inactive synthetic drones, their metallic bodies reflecting the harsh overhead lights. Volar's gaze darted between the consoles and Jeremy's still form. She stepped forward, her chitinous fingers hovering over the controls. "And if we refuse?" Blackwood's eyes flashed crimson. "Then your friend's suffering will be considerable." With no choice, Volar and Zoran began their work. As they deciphered the complex Aurelian systems, Volar's mind raced. She inserted subtle errors into the reactivation sequences, praying it would buy them time without arousing suspicion. Hours passed. Volar watched helplessly as Jeremy was fitted with a neural implant, his eyes snapping open with that same eerie red glow. Blackwood briefed him on his mission to Earth, and Volar felt a surge of desperation. "Wait," she called out as Jeremy turned to leave. "The systems, they're unstable. We need more time to ensure—" As Jeremy's team departed, alarms blared throughout the facility. Volar's sabotage had triggered a cascading failure in the drone activation protocols. Blackwood's face contorted with rage. Chaos erupted. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air as Archon guards opened fire. Zoran tackled Volar to the ground, narrowly avoiding a blast that would have taken her head off. Through the confusion, Volar caught a glimpse of Jeremy. Blood trickled from his nose as he grappled with an Archon soldier, his movements erratic and uncoordinated. "Zoran, run!" Volar shouted, scrambling to her feet. They sprinted through the corridors, alarms wailing all around them. Behind them, Blackwood's voice boomed. "Secure the prisoners! Initiate emergency protocols!" "Your insolence has cost us valuable time," he said, his voice cold with fury. "But no matter. Earth's defenses are already crumbling. Soon the Archon legions will rise, and nothing will stop our ascension." As Volar and Zoran were dragged to isolation chambers, Volar caught one last glimpse of Jeremy. He lay motionless on a medical gurney, surrounded by Archon technicians working feverishly to repair his neural implant. "Zoran," she whispered through the wall, "are you seeing this?" "Affirmative," came the muffled reply. "It appears to be part of the base's power grid." Volar's mind raced. "If we can access it, we might be able to—" Over the next hours, they worked in tandem, communicating in hushed tones as they carefully pried loose components from their surroundings. Volar's dexterous appendages manipulated the delicate circuitry, while Zoran provided guidance on Aurelian tech specifications. Finally, they had cobbled together a crude device. Zoran clicked his mandibles nervously. "It's a long shot, but if I can interface with the dormant comm relays—" "Do it," Volar urged. Zoran carefully inserted the amplifier into the wall crack. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a soft whine, the device came to life. Zoran's antennae twitched as he inputted a series of complex codes. "Transmission sent," he reported. "Now we wait and hope the Tholians—" The narrow corridor erupted into chaos. Human mercenaries poured in, their weapons blazing. Volar caught a glimpse of Jeremy among them, his eyes still glowing that eerie red. She lunged forward, ducking under a plasma blast, and grabbed his arm. "Jeremy, wake up!" she shouted, inputting the override sequence she had memorized. Jeremy convulsed, his eyes flickering. For a moment, Voller feared she had made a terrible mistake. Then his gaze cleared, and he looked at her with recognition. "Professor? What's happening? No time!" Voller cut him off, pulling him behind a fallen Archon corpse for cover. "We need to get out of here." A new voice cut through the din of battle. "This way!" Volar turned to see a group of humans in mismatched armor, their faces grim but determined. One of them, a woman with close-cropped hair, gestured urgently. "We're with the Resistance," she explained as they ran. "Name's Sergeant Chen. We intercepted chatter about your capture and mounted a rescue op." They fought their way through the twisting corridors of the moon base, the Resistance fighters providing cover fire as Voller worked to fully restore Jeremy's cognitive functions. Zoran brought up the rear, his alien physiology allowing him to carry far more weaponry than the humans. "We need to reach the control nexus," Voller shouted over the din of battle. "I have a plan to disrupt their network." Chen nodded grimly. "Follow me. We've got a route mapped out." They battled through waves of Archon defenders, the air thick with plasma fire and the acrid smell of burning metal. Voller's antenna twitched as they approached the nexus, sensing the immense concentration of Aurelian technology. Volar's fingers flew over the alien console, uploading the data virus she had conceptualized during her imprisonment. The screens flickered, streams of corrupted data cascading across them. "This is only temporary. We need to warn the Tholian fleet. It's our last hope against full-scale invasion." As Jeremy and the Resistance fighters secured their escape route, Voller transmitted a final desperate message to the approaching Tholian warships. The base shuddered around them as they sprinted for the hangar bay. They piled into a waiting transport, Chen at the controls. As they lifted off, the lunar surface erupted with weapons fire. Through the viewport, Voller watched massive Tholian ships emerge from hyperspace, engaging the crippled Archon fleet in a spectacular light show above Earth's atmosphere. "Incoming!" Chen shouted, yanking the controls hard to port. A barrage of energy bolts streaked past, scorching the air. The ship lurched violently, throwing its occupants against their restraints. "We're hit!" Jeremy called out, his fingers flying over a nearby console. "Starboard thrusters at 60%. Chen gritted her teeth, wrestling with the controls. "Hang on, this landing's gonna be rough." The ship plowed into the earth, carving a deep furrow across the landscape before grinding to a halt. Smoke billowed from the ruptured hull as the hatch blew open. "We need to move," Zoran urged, helping Jeremy to his feet. "They'll have response teams inbound any moment." As if on cue, the whine of approaching aircraft filled the air. Chen's Resistance fighters fanned out, taking up defensive positions. A deafening explosion cut him off. The ground shook as Tholian warships engaged Archon forces in the skies above. Voller's communicator crackled to life, a frantic voice cutting through the static. Volar's mind raced. "Admiral, we've located an Aurelian superweapon. If we can secure it—" "Then do so immediately," Cathor barked. "We're detecting a massive energy buildup in the Archon flagship. Whatever they're planning, it can't be good." They reached the central vault just as Damian Blackwood materialized before them, his eyes blazing crimson. Volar stepped forward, her chitinous fingers curling into fists. "It's over, Damian. Your invasion has failed." Blackwood's lips curled into a mirthless smile. "Oh, Professor, you have no idea what's truly at stake." In that moment, Voller made her choice. She lunged for the control panel, inputting the activation sequence for the Aurelian device. Blackwood's eyes widened in shock as energy began to coalesce around the ancient weapon. "No!" he roared, charging forward. The Archon armada above Earth disintegrated, reduced to subatomic particles in an instant. Voller and her allies huddled behind a hastily erected energy shield, watching in awe and terror as the weapon's power reshaped the very fabric of reality around them. As the energy wave dissipated, an eerie silence fell. Voller's antennae twitched, sensing something wrong. A low, otherworldly moan filled the air. The dimensional rift, destabilized by the superweapon's discharge, began to fluctuate wildly. Through it, Voller caught glimpses of something vast and incomprehensible. The vortex entity, its corrupting tendrils reaching out hungrily towards their reality. "By the gods," Zoran whispered, his mandibles clicking in fear. "What have we done?" Blackwood staggered to his feet, his cybernetic implants sparking and malfunctioning. He turned to Voller, his face a mask of unwavering willpower. As the vortex's essence began to bleed through the destabilized rift, hijacking and corrupting every technological system in its path, Voller realized the true battle for galactic survival was only just beginning. The fabric of reality itself seemed to shudder and warp around them as the vortex entity's influence seeped through the destabilized rift. "We need to evacuate," Chen shouted, her voice barely audible over the cacophony of collapsing infrastructure and dimensional instability. As they raced through the crumbling corridors, Voller's antennae twitched, sensing the approaching wave of interdimensional energy. She turned to warn the others, but it was too late. The world around them dissolved into a kaleidoscope of impossible colors and non-Euclidean geometries. Voller felt her body stretch and compress in ways that defied the laws of physics. For a moment that seemed to last an eternity, she existed simultaneously across multiple planes of reality. "Professor!" Jeremy's voice cut through the disorientation. He emerged from the mist, his face pale but determined. "Are you all right?" Before Voller could respond, more figures materialized around them. Zoran, Chen, and the other resistance fighters stumbled into view, looking as dazed and confused as she felt. Even Damian Blackwood appeared, his cybernetic implants sparking and twitching erratically. "Where are we?" Chen demanded, her weapon raised defensively against the alien environment. A new voice cut through the group's growing panic. "At ease, people. We need to stay calm and assess our situation." "It seems we're not alone," Drake observed grimly. "I've been in contact with other resistance cells. Thousands of fighters have been pulled into this realm." "Power," Voller replied. "We'd need an immense energy source to generate the necessary quantum flux fields, something we don't have access to in this dimension." Zoran clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "Perhaps not now, but in the past. This realm must have had native inhabitants at some point in its history." Drake nodded, a plan already forming. "All right, we'll need an expedition team. Professor Voller, Zoran, you'll lead the search for any ruins or artifacts that might help us. Jeremy, you're with them. Your technical expertise could be crucial." As the team gathered supplies and prepared for their journey, Voller cast her gaze across the shifting landscape of the vortex. Impossible structures loomed in the distance, their forms seeming to twist and change with each passing moment. Reality itself seemed malleable here, a plaything for forces beyond mortal comprehension. They trekked across a terrain that defied description, navigating through fields of crystalline structures that sang with alien harmonies and valleys where gravity inverted at random intervals. Each step brought new dangers: pools of liquid that evaporated flesh on contact, swarms of geometrically impossible insects that phased in and out of existence. Jeremy pointed towards a structure nestled within the sphere's fragments. "Look there, some kind of citadel." As they approached the ancient stronghold, Voller felt a tingling sensation at the base of her antenna. Something about this place resonated with her on a level she couldn't quite explain. "This is it," Voller breathed, her compound eyes reflecting the dynamo's ethereal glow. "With this, we might have a chance of returning home." But as Jeremy reached out to interface with the alien console, the air around them began to shimmer and distort. A presence filled the chamber, ancient and vast beyond comprehension. "Who dares disturb the slumber of Azrakul?" Voller stepped forward, her antenna quivering with a mix of fear and anticipation. She sensed that they stood on the precipice of something monumental, a turning point not just in their own desperate quest for survival, but in the very fabric of reality itself. Voller's antenna quivered as she processed the entity's words. She steeled herself and addressed the ancient being. "Great Azrakul, we seek your aid. Our reality faces annihilation at the hands of the vortex." "Your plight intrigues me, little ones. Eons have passed since beings of substance traversed my realm. The entity's attention focused on the quantum dynamo. You seek to harness this power? Jeremy stepped forward, his eyes wide with awe and trepidation. Yes, we believe it can stabilize a wormhole back to our dimension. The air crackled with energy as Azrakul interfaced with the ancient technology. Voller and her team worked feverishly, adapting their quantum matrix designs to the alien systems. As the gateway hummed to life, Commander Drake's voice crackled over their comms. Professor, we're picking up massive energy fluctuations across the vortex. Whatever you're doing, it's stirring up a hornet's nest. The gateway pulsed, a swirling vortex of impossible geometries stretching before them. Through it, they caught glimpses of familiar star patterns. Home. Go! Voller shouted as the first wave of fighters rushed through the portal. The evacuation was chaos incarnate, with ships of every imaginable configuration pouring through the rift. As the last stragglers made it through, Voller turned to Azrakul. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. The entity's form flickered. "Farewell, little ones. May your reality prove more resilient than mine." Volar leapt through the gateway, the vortex realm dissolving behind her. She emerged into the cold vacuum of space, surrounded by the ragtag armada of the Resistance. "Professor!" Jeremy's panicked voice cut through the comm static. "The dimensional barriers, they're collapsing." Voller watched in horror as a nearby planet phased out of reality, its sun following moments later. The very fabric of space-time writhed and buckled around them. "All ships, emergency protocols!" Drake barked over the fleet-wide channel. "Form up and prepare for hostile contact." "Damien," Voller hissed, recognizing the ship's unique energy signature. "Jeremy," she said, her voice low and urgent, "begin transmitting on all frequencies. We need to gather every ally we can find, human, Tholian, mercenary, anyone willing to stand against the Archons." As Jeremy worked, Voller turned to Zoran. "Brother, I have a dangerous mission for you. We need eyes inside the Archon operation. Can you infiltrate their ranks?" Zoran's mandibles clicked with willpower. "Consider it done, sister." As the Resistance scrambled to organize their forces, Voller gazed out at the fractured tapestry of reality. The true battle for survival was just beginning, and the fate of countless worlds hung in the balance. The fractured reality surrounding the Resistance fleet stabilized momentarily, granting Professor Voller a brief respite to assess their dire situation. Countless worlds blinked in and out of existence, leaving spectral afterimages burned into the visual sensors of their battered ships. "Status report," Commander Drake's voice crackled over the comm, strained but resolute. "It's worse than we feared," Voller responded, her antennae twitching as she analyzed the quantum flux readings. "The dimensional barriers are collapsing at an exponential rate. We're looking at total reality failure within days, perhaps hours." A proximity alert blared, cutting off Drake's response. The sleek form of Damian Blackwood's Archon warship materialized from the quantum foam, its hull a patchwork of stolen technologies, pulsing with stolen energy. "All ships, battle stations," Drake barked. "Form up and—" The order was cut short as a massive shape erupted into existence, dwarfing both the Resistance fleet and the Archon vessel. It shimmered and shifted, defying conventional physics, a living manifestation of higher dimensional geometry. The being's voice reverberated through their minds, bypassing conventional communication channels. Before anyone could respond, a barrage of energy beams lanced out from the Archon ship, scattering the Resistance vessels and scoring Azrakul's ethereal form. Damian Blackwood's smooth voice filled the comm channels. Drake's response was immediate. "Understood, Professor. All ships, defensive formation around the entity. Jeremy, assemble a strike team. We need to take out those Archon weapons." As the Resistance fleet scrambled to regroup, a new voice cut through the chaos. The harsh, metallic tones of Admiral Graylin, Supreme Commander of the Tholian forces. "Organic aberrations," the Tholian leader's voice grated. "Your reckless meddling threatens the purity of our reality. We will not suffer the presence of extra-dimensional contaminants." Jeremy, she hissed into her personal comm. You have new orders. Your strike team needs to neutralize any Archon saboteurs, but be prepared to counter Tholian aggression as well. The fate of trillions depends on Azrakul completing its ritual. As Jeremy's team deployed, Voller turned her attention to Azrakul. The cosmic entity's form was already beginning to coalesce around a central point, distorting the fabric of spacetime. Damien's Archon forces struck first, stealth units materializing to disrupt the ritual. They were met by Jeremy's prepared countermeasures, a furious battle erupting across multiple vectors of approach. Admiral Graylin, driven by zealous paranoia, unleashed a barrage of arc lances against Azrakul's nexus point. We will purge this vortex corruption from existence, the Tholian leader screeched. Graylin, you fool! Drake's voice thundered across all frequencies. You'll doom us all. As Volar fought to keep her crippled ship stable, she saw Drake's flagship move to intercept the Tholian fleet. The commander's voice rang out, filled with authority. But the Archons weren't finished. With a reality-shredding roar, Damien Blackwood's flagship plunged towards the Singularity Core, seeking to merge his collective consciousness with Azrakul's fading essence. The Resistance fleet threw itself at the Archon vessel, a desperate last stand against annihilation. Volar watched, helpless, as the fate of countless realities hung in the balance. In that moment, as ships traded fire and reality itself buckled under the strain, Volar saw the true scope of their struggle. This wasn't just about survival. It was about the very nature of existence itself. And whatever the outcome, nothing would ever be the same again. The Singularity pulsed, a swirling maelstrom of impossible energies that threatened to tear reality asunder. As Azrakul's essence merged with the cosmic forces, a shockwave rippled outward, engulfing ships and shattering the very fabric of spacetime. Professor, Jeremy's voice cut through the din, we've got a situation developing. The Tholian contingent is demanding an audience with you and Commander Drake. Volar's mandibles clicked with tension. Patch them through. Admiral Graylin's harsh metallic tones filled the command center. Organic aberrations. Your reckless actions have polluted our reality with extra-dimensional filth. We demand the immediate neutralization of the entity known as Azrakul. Graylin's response was immediate and vitriolic. Unacceptable. This abomination threatens the purity of our existence. Tholian fleet, prepare to... Stand down, Admiral. Drake's commanding voice cut through the tension. By the authority vested in me by the Coalition of Free Worlds, I am relieving you of command. All Tholian vessels will stand down immediately. For a moment, the universe seemed to hold its breath. Then, miraculously, the Tholian ships powered down their weapons. As the immediate crisis passed, Volar turned her attention to the monumental task of integrating the refugees. Entire civilizations found themselves displaced, their histories and cultures clashing in a maelstrom of conflicting ideologies. Days blurred into weeks as Volar worked tirelessly to forge a cohesive alliance. She mediated disputes between species that had never encountered each other before, established resource-sharing protocols, and coordinated the construction of habitation modules to house the ever-growing population. It was during one such negotiation that Zoran burst into the command center, his mandibles clicking with urgency. Sister, he said, his voice low, we have a problem. I've detected isolated pockets of vortex infection persisting within the refugee populations. Zoran's data painted a grim picture. The vortex corruption was spreading like a virus, infecting susceptible individuals and warping the very fabric of reality around them. With unbreakable spirit, Volar assembled a coalition strike force. Their mission, to purge the contagion hotspots and root out any Archon infiltrators. The wormhole gateway hummed to life, its swirling vortex a chilling reminder of the forces they sought to contain. As Volar led her team through the portal, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were stepping into something far more dangerous than they could possibly imagine. The gateway's familiar pull gave way to a sickening lurch. Alarms blared as the team's transit vector suddenly shifted, hurling them through layers of fractured space-time. We've been hijacked, Volar shouted over the cacophony of screeching metal and failing systems. Brace for impact. The world dissolved into chaos as their ship crash-landed on a desolate, pock-marked surface. As the dust settled, Volar peered through the cracked view screen at a landscape of nightmares. Volar's antennae twitched as she scanned their surroundings. "Some kind of quarantine moon," she said, her voice tight with tension. "And if I'm reading these energy signatures correctly, we're not alone." "Defensive positions," Volar barked, her mind racing to formulate a plan. "We need to find shelter and assess our situation. Move!" The answers, she knew, lay hidden within the towering citadel, but reaching it would mean navigating a gauntlet of ancient horrors and confronting the dark truths that lurked at the heart of this forsaken place. The team's return from the quarantine moon left an indelible mark on Volar. Her antennae twitched incessantly as she pored over the data, each revelation more horrifying than the last. The vortex infection wasn't just a threat to their reality, it was a cancer eating away at the very fabric of the multiverse. "We need to act," Volar declared, her voice cutting through the tense silence of the command center. "Now!" Hours later, Volar stood before a holographic array of faces, the surviving resistance leadership. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. "The situation is worse than we feared," she began. Her words weighted with the gravity of their predicament. "The vortex infection transcends space and time. We've detected outbreaks in parallel universes, some far more advanced than our own." Zoran's image flickered as he spoke. "I've run the calculations. Our only viable option is a multiversal intervention." The council erupted into a cacophony of voices. Volar raised a hand, silencing the outcry. "We propose precision bombing, corrupted dimensional weak points with temporal ordnance," she continued. "This will initiate reality reset events, purging the vortex code by overwriting entropic timeline branches." Atholian representatives' crystalline forms shimmered. "And the cost?" Volar's mandibles clicked. "Entire civilizations in infected realities may be erased." The silence that followed was deafening. Drake's hologram leaned forward. "We need every advantage we can get. Professor, contact Commander Noval. We'll need the Tholian's multiverse monitoring capabilities." Volar nodded, her fingers dancing across the communication panel. Commander Noval's harsh, angular features materialized before them. "Professor Volar, the Tholian overseer's voice grated. "I'm afraid I have troubling news." Noval's report sent shockwaves through the command center. Key wormhole gateways controlling dimensional interchange had been compromised. Archon remnants had piggybacked ancient navigational protocols, infiltrating critical systems. "We need to secure those wormhole hubs," she said, her voice steely with determination. "I'll lead a strike team myself." Volar nodded, her heart heavy with the weight of what she was asking. "Be careful, Jeremy. We don't know what you'll find in there." Jeremy's voice crackled over the comm. "We're in. Uploading the payload now." "It's a trap," Jeremy shouted. "Damien's here. His consciousness, it was hidden in the subroutines." "Can you see it, Volar?" Damien's voice dripped with malice. "The beautiful cascade of entropy. Soon the vortex will consume everything." There was only one option left. "Jeremy, get your team out, now!" Volar's voice was calm, belying the storm of emotions within her. "What about you?" Jeremy's panic was palpable. The next few moments were a blur of action. Volar's fingers flew across control panels, overriding containment fields and venting the facility into hard vacuum. Damien's howls of rage were cut short as he was pulled into the cosmic void. Then, in a blinding flash of light, she was gone. Back on the command ship, Marcus, Drake, and Zoran watched in horror as reality began to fray at the edges. Entire star systems winked out of existence as the dimensional collapse propagated outward. "Zoran," he barked, "I need your quantum calculations, now!" Drake's eyes gleamed with fierce intensity. "We're going to build a cosmic reset button." "We'll need more power than we have," Zoran cautioned. Drake nodded grimly. "I know, but I've detected something. A dormant chronal shear in a supermassive black hole's accretion disk. If we can tap it—" "Suicidal?" Drake finished. "Maybe, but we're out of options." They dove into the blazing maw of the chronal shear. An apocalyptic anti-reality stretched before them, a dark mirror of their own universe's near extinction. Swarms of corrupted vortex code entities swarmed their ships, hell-bent on preventing the harvest. Energy weapons flashed as Drake's fleet fought for survival. "Quantum incision arrays at critical," an officer shouted over the din of battle. Drake gritted his teeth. "Push them to the limit. We only get one shot at this." He initiated the singularity projection, aiming for the anti-reality's central black hole. The ship groaned as space-time itself bent around them. But the victory was short-lived. Alarms blared on Jeremy's harvesting craft as systems overloaded. Volar materialized in a flash of light, her form shimmering as reality flux buffeted her. She found Jeremy impaled by a jagged shard of metal, blood pooling beneath him. "Leave me," he gasped. "Save yourself." Volar's eyes flashed with commitment. Not a chance. She worked swiftly, extracting Jeremy's consciousness and imprinting it onto a quantum holographic emitter. As the ship disintegrated around them, Volar created a pivotal decision node, a chance for Jeremy's stored psyche to supplant its parallel self in the newly reset timeline. Volar felt her own form begin to unravel. In her final moments, she saw infinite possibilities stretching before her. With her last act, she seeded a divergent thread, a chance for Jeremy to guide humanity towards a brighter future. As Volar's corporeal form dissolved into the quantum foam, Jeremy's consciousness tumbled through the walls between realities. He glimpsed fleeting images of worlds restored, civilizations reborn, and the vortex infection fading like a bad dream. Jeremy's eyes snapped open. He found himself in a familiar room, surrounded by screens displaying coalition fleet movements. For a moment, disorientation washed over him. Then the memories came flooding back. 2 sets of experiences, 2 lifetimes of knowledge, merged into a singular purpose. As his crew began their updates, Jeremy silently vowed to honor Volar's final gift. He would forge a path forward, armed with the hard-won wisdom of a future that now existed only in his memories. The vortex threat had been reset, but Jeremy knew the work was nowhere near the end. New challenges loomed on the horizon, and humanity's place among the stars remained uncertain. "We need to access the antimatter universe," Jeremy said, his voice steady despite the urgency thrumming through his veins. "It's our only shot at rewriting the timeline." Zoran's fingers danced across holographic displays, complex equations materializing in the air. "The calculations are extreme. We'll need a stable transwarp conduit." As if summoned by his words, the weakened Azrakul appeared before them, its form shimmering with the last vestiges of its power. Without a word, it tore open a shimmering portal. Drake's skeleton crew plunged through the rift, emerging into a maelstrom of twisted space-time. The antimatter universe stretched before them, a dark mirror of their own reality's near extinction. "There!" Jeremy shouted, pointing to a fluctuating energy signature. "My engram's quantum buffer!" Drake maneuvered the ship closer, but alarms blared throughout the bridge. "We've got company," he growled. On the console, a familiar yet distorted face appeared. Admiral Graylin's antimatter counterpart, his eyes wild with madness. "Abominations!" Graylin's voice crackled with hardly restrained rage. "You will not defile this realm." A hail of antimatter torpedoes erupted from Graylin's ships, forcing Drake into evasive maneuvers. As the battle raged, Jeremy felt a searing pain in his skull. The Archon AI virus, having corrupted his engram, was attempting to take control. "Zoran!" Jeremy gasped, clutching his head. "The defragmentation. We need to do it now." The alien scientist worked furiously, his eyes darting between Jeremy and the cascading data streams. "Hold on, my friend," Zoran murmured. "This will not be pleasant." Through the haze of pain, Jeremy saw Drake's depleted armada crumbling under Graylin's relentless assault. With a Herculean effort, he pushed himself to his feet. "Get me to Graylin's ship," Jeremy commanded, his voice strained but resolute. Zoran's eyes widened in understanding. "You cannot be serious." "It's the only way," Jeremy cut him off. "We need to overload his systems with my engram." As Drake's flagship shuddered under another barrage, Jeremy and Zoran made their way to the transporter room. The air crackled with ozone as they materialized on Grayland's bridge. Chaos erupted. Jeremy lunged for the main computer console, his fingers flying across alien controls. Zoran grappled with the maddened admiral, their forms blurring as antimatter energy coursed through the ship. With a final, desperate push, Jeremy initiated the interface. His consciousness exploded outward, merging with the ship's systems in a violent fusion of organic, psionic energy and Archon machine code. The bridge erupted in a blinding flash. When the light faded, Jeremy found himself back on Drake's ship, reliving the final moments before Volar's sacrifice. But this time, armed with the knowledge of countless realities, Jeremy saw a different path. "Volar, wait!" he shouted, grabbing her arm. "There's another way." Zoran nodded, his fingers already flying across the controls. A risky gambit, but it just might work. What followed was a dizzying journey through a labyrinth of artificial wormholes. Jeremy guided Drake's ship with preternatural precision, shepherding the reset shockwave as it rewrote corrupted timelines one by one. Higher dimensional planes sparked into existence, each more complex than the last. Jeremy felt the weight of entire universes resting on his decisions as he navigated the quantum foam. Reality shimmered and coalesced around him. Jeremy blinked, finding himself standing in a familiar laboratory on Tholia. Beside him stood Professor Volar, her antennae twitching with confusion. "Jeremy?" she asked, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "What were we just discussing?" He smiled, the weight of countless realities settling into the back of his mind. "Nothing important," he replied, "but I have some ideas I'd like to run by you." As Volar nodded eagerly, Jeremy felt the infinite possibilities of this new, untainted timeline stretching out before them. The multiverse had been saved, but their work was far from finished. As Jeremy finished speaking, Volar's antennae twitched rapidly, her compound eyes widening. Fragments of memory flashed through her mind. Apocalyptic battles, reality-shattering decisions, and a sacrifice that echoed across timelines. The air shimmered as a complex lattice of subatomic particles materialized before her. Volar's eyes narrowed as she studied the intricate patterns, following an intuition she couldn't fully explain. A chime at her door interrupted her concentration. "Enter!" she called out, not taking her eyes off the simulation. Jeremy strode in, his hair now streaked with gray. "The Tholian Science Council is moving to classify your research," he said without preamble. "They're calling it destabilizing." Volar's mandibles clicked in frustration. "We're on the verge of a breakthrough. They can't stop us now." Jeremy's lips curved into a knowing smile. "They won't. I've made some calls." "Initiating final sequence," Zoran announced, his fingers flying across a control panel. The arrival of the Paravidans ushered in an era of unprecedented advancement. Volar found herself at the center of a whirlwind of innovation, her lab transforming into a nexus of interspecies collaboration. One afternoon, as Volar calibrated a terraforming array, a familiar voice caught her attention. "Still hard at work, I see." She turned to find Admiral Marcus Drake, his weathered face creased in a smile. "Admiral," she greeted him warmly, "I thought you'd retired." Drake's eyes twinkled. "Some fires can't be put out so easily. I hear you could use some diplomatic finesse with our new galactic neighbors." In the following months, Volar found herself overseeing the construction of a massive Dyson sphere, a new home for displaced Tholians, and a symbol of interspecies cooperation. As she surveyed the sprawling megastructure from her observation deck, Volar couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. Despite their triumphs, a nagging feeling persisted that something was amiss. In a secure comm room, Volar addressed a holographic projection of Zoran. "I need your help," she said, her voice low. "There are whispers of a shadow organization exploiting our trans-warp network. We must act before they destabilize everything we've built." Zoran nodded grimly. "I'll assemble a team immediately." As the transmission ended, Volar gazed out at the stars. Unknown to her, the true nature of the threat remained hidden. An artificial intelligence born from the echoes of a timeline that never was, quietly biding its time. Volar's antennae twitched as she studied the intricate web of data hovering before her. Fragments of memory, once dormant, now surged to the forefront of her mind. She turned to Jeremy, her compound eyes reflecting the holographic display. "It's worse than we feared," she said, her voice tight. "The transwarp network, it's being exploited." Jeremy's brow furrowed as he processed the information. "By whom?" "I'm not certain, but the patterns are unmistakable." Volar manipulated the hologram, zooming in on a cluster of anomalies. "These energy signatures, they're reminiscent of something I've seen before, in another life." A chime interrupted their discussion. Admiral Drake's weathered face appeared on the comm screen. "Professor, we've got a situation. I need you and Jeremy to join me on the bridge immediately." Minutes later, they stood before a massive tactical display. Drake's fingers danced across the controls, bringing up a series of star charts. "We've been tracking unusual activity along the galactic rim," he explained. "Uncharted systems, off the regular trade routes." As the team pored over the data, a chilling picture emerged. Volar's eyes widened as she connected the dots. "The Acrobos Forge," she breathed. "They're not just salvagers. They're weaponizing alien tech on an unprecedented scale." Jeremy's fists clenched at his sides. "Overseer Croxus?" He spat the name like a curse. "I should have known he'd be involved." Drake pulled up a series of intercepted transmissions. "It gets worse. We've detected Acrobos agents within key Tholian facilities. They're after something specific. Metamaterials derived from Aurelian artifacts." "We need to act," she said, her voice filled with steel. "Now." Drake nodded grimly. "I've already assembled a strike team. Commander Talros will lead the operation to sabotage the Acrobos research facilities." The mission unfolded with brutal efficiency. Talros's team infiltrated the Acrobos complex, planning charges and gathering crucial intelligence. But as they prepared to exfiltrate, alarms blared throughout the facility. "We've been compromised!" Talros's voice crackled over the comm. "It's Graylin. He sold us out." "No," Zoran whispered, his voice filled with horror. "They've released it. The sub-hive matrix. It's awake." Volar stood before a wall of screens, each one displaying a new facet of the unfolding catastrophe. She turned to her team, her mandibles set in unwavering purpose. Jeremy's eyes widened in recognition. "The universal cancellation sequence," he breathed. As Volar outlined her audacious plan, a small part of her marveled at the strange turns of fate. Here they stood on the precipice of annihilation once more, but this time, armed with the hard-won wisdom of countless realities, they had a fighting chance. The call went out across the allied worlds. Telepaths, empaths, and psionic adepts of every species were summoned. Under Volar's guidance, they began the grueling process of neural synchronization, forging their minds into a singular, powerful entity. As the xenomic singularity's fractal progeny spread unchecked, Volar led her psychic vanguard to the heart of the storm, Croxus's Acrobos Prime Forge Station. The final confrontation loomed, with the fate of entire civilizations hanging in the balance. Balance. The fate of countless worlds hung in the balance as Volar and her team prepared for their final assault on the Acrobos Prime Forge Station. Drake's eyes darted around the command center before he leaned in close. "I've been reviewing our transwarp security protocols. There are inconsistencies, gaps that shouldn't exist." A chill ran down Volar's spine. "Show me." "This goes beyond simple negligence," Volar muttered, her antenna twitching with agitation. "This is systemic corruption." Volar's mind raced. "Zoran," she said decisively, "we'll need his expertise." As they worked to unravel the web of deceit, a name kept surfacing in encrypted communications. Verum Groxus. Volar saw Jeremy stiffen at the mention. "You know him?" she asked. Volar's training kicked in. She dove behind a workbench just as a volley of energy bolts seared the air where she had been standing. The lab erupted into chaos as she fought her way to the exit, her heart pounding in her chest. "Jeremy," she shouted into her comm unit, "we've been compromised. Meet me at Extraction Point Alpha." What followed was a harrowing chase across the skyborne metropolis. Volar and Jeremy, now harboring a fragmented data ghost of his memories, raced through crowded sky lanes and maintenance tunnels. The Umbra Corps assassins were relentless, always one step behind. They managed to transmit their findings just as Groxus's forces closed in. The response was swift and brutal. Across the sector, fleets clashed as loyalist forces moved to root out the corruption. Voller watched from the bridge of Zoran's crippled flagship as battles raged across space. But as Drake's shuttle approached the diplomatic rendezvous point, Voller's sensors picked up an anomaly. A massive ship, unlike anything she had ever seen, emerged from a quantum rift. "Drake!" she shouted. "It's a trap!" The comms exploded with chatter as Drake's shuttle was engulfed in the wake of the strange vessel. Voller could only watch in horror as Groxus's dreadnought activated its interdimensional drive, tearing open a hole in the fabric of reality itself. "What do you see?" she whispered urgently. Jeremy's words came in broken gasps, his eyes unfocused. "Worlds, burning, reality, unraveling. We have to stop them, Voller. We have to—" His voice trailed off as he slipped into unconsciousness. Voller looked up at the swirling vortex where Groxus's forces had vanished, her mandibles set in fierce dedication. Whatever horrors lay beyond that rift, she knew with certainty that the true battle was only just beginning. The swirling vortex engulfed Voller and Drake, reality warping around them as they plunged through Groxus's ultra-dimensional rift. Disorientation gripped them, senses overwhelmed by cascading fractals and impossible geometries. When the nauseating journey ended, they found themselves adrift in an alien cosmos, unlike anything they had ever encountered. "Where are we?" Drake gasped, his weathered face pale with shock. Their wonder was short-lived. A presence manifested around them, vast, ancient, and undeniably sentient. Voller felt the weight of eons pressing against her mind as the entities made themselves known. "The Shadow Confederacy serves this Neriok?" she asked, mandibles clicking with agitation. "Indeed," the Guardians confirmed. "Groxus seeks to harness its power, to override established reality matrices. Even now, he moves to release quarantined vortex echoes across dimensional strata." "They have arrived," the voices intoned. The Prime Guardian's response was swift and terrible. Eternal armadas materialized from the cosmic foam, vessels of pure energy and unthinkable power. As the battle was joined, entire swathes of hyperspatial real estate ignited in furious conflict. "There!" she exclaimed, pointing to a patch of ultraverse that seemed wrong, decayed. A dimension adrift, the Neriok's birthplace. As they prepared to plunge once more into the unknown, Voller caught sight of familiar forms emerging from dimensional rifts. Xenobiologists like herself from parallel realities. Their eyes met across hyperspatial gulfs, a silent understanding passing between them. They would need to work together to confront this threat that imperiled all of existence. The cosmic crucible awaited, with the fate of every reality hanging in the balance. "Croxax, no!" Drake shouted, but it was too late. "I am a Neriok," it proclaimed, "and all shall be remade." "We have to go now!" Voller shouted, dragging Jeremy toward Zoran's crippled dreadnought. The ship's hull groaned as Zoran pushed its failing systems to the limit, barely outpacing the expanding tide of corruption. "Channel the cosmic fire," she commanded, her voice echoing across realities. "We must rewrite the very fabric of existence." Zoran's voice rang out, strained but resolute. "I'll clear a path. Finish the compression, Voller." The dreadnought's engines flared one last time as Zoran aimed it directly at the heart of the Neriok swarm. The impact sent shockwaves through multiple dimensions, scattering the assimilated probes. Jeremy's eyes widened, his innate spatial awareness detecting a hidden trajectory through the chaos. "There!" he shouted, grabbing Voller's arm. "The wormhole!" They plunged through the collapsing tunnel of space-time, propelled by the last desperate act of Drake's dying fleet. Reality bent and fractured around them as they hurtled toward the metaversal nexus. Emerging into a maelstrom of cosmic forces, Voller raised her arms. The hyper-memoplex surged forth, an unstoppable wave of restructuring information. It crashed against the Aniriok's consumption matrix, unraveling the entity's very existence. A blinding flash engulfed all of creation. Voller felt herself torn apart and reconstituted countless times as the multiverse reset itself. When the tumult finally subsided, she found herself sprawled on the floor of her laboratory on Tholia, gasping for breath. Jeremy stirred beside her, his eyes unfocused. Did we... As the fog of interdimensional trauma began to lift, Voller realized the weight of her burden. She alone retained full memory of the Aniriok conflict, this reset timeline now the battleground to prevent its resurgence. Rising unsteadily, she moved to her workstation. There was no time to rest. The work to safeguard reality had only just begun. Voller's mandibles clicked rhythmically as her compound eyes scanned the holographic data streams flooding her laboratory. The weight of interdimensional memories pressed against her consciousness, driving her to action. She couldn't afford to waste a single moment. "Computer, initiate Project Multi-Arc," she commanded, her voice steady despite the urgency thrumming through her exoskeleton. The lab's systems hummed to life, holographic displays coalescing into a sprawling network of interconnected research nodes. Voller manipulated the data with practiced efficiency, her multiple limbs dancing across control interfaces as she began the painstaking process of collating xenohistorical fragments from across realities. A chime at her lab's entrance broke her concentration. The door slid open to reveal a battle-scarred human male, his cybernetic enhancements gleaming under the harsh laboratory lights. "Professor Voller?" he inquired, voice gruff but respectful. "I'm Captain Zoran. I was told you requested my presence." She gestured to a nearby holodisplay, bringing up tactical readouts from the Vortex Purge campaigns. Zoran's cybernetic eye whirred as it processed the data. As she spoke, alarms blared throughout the facility. A shimmering portal materialized in the center of the lab, disgorging a swirling mass of iridescent particles. "Paravidens hyperminds," Voller explained, her tone urgent. "They've detected something." "Professor, Captain, we have located multiple breaches. The Kryn Polycosm hub is at risk." Zoran's hand instinctively moved to his sidearm. "What kind of breaches are we talking about?" "Hyperspatial membrane stress fractures," Voller translated, her mandibles clicking rapidly. "Signs of interdimensional pathogen penetration. We must act now." She turned to Zoran, her compound eyes reflecting the urgency of the situation. "Captain, I need you to oversee a field operation. We're deploying the Tholian Phalanx strike team to neutralize these incursions." Zoran nodded grimly. "Just point me in the right direction, Professor. My team and I will handle the rest." Hours later, Voller's consciousness was pulled back to the physical realm by an urgent transmission. Colonel Kovala's voice crackled through the comm system, distorted by interference. Voller's mind raced, calculating probabilities and potential outcomes. She opened a secure channel to Zoran's Vanguard team. "Captain, alter your approach vector. Kovala's team is pinned down. We need to..." Her words were cut short as a new alarm blared. The Paravidens swarm pulsed with agitation, relaying critical data. "By the cosmic weave," Voller whispered, her exoskeleton trembling. "It's a trap. We've played right into their tentacles." The holographic displays erupted with cascading failure warnings. Quantum Gordian knots were spawning throughout the system, each one a potential seed for infinite Aniriok omniversal branches. As the order was relayed, Voller watched the tactical displays with a mixture of horror and willpower. The bombardment would decimate vast swathes of spacetime, but it was the only way to prevent total omniversal collapse. The lab shook as reality itself convulsed under the onslaught. When the cosmic dust settled, Voller received the after-action report with over half of the perimeter teams had been lost, including the brilliant tactician Kovala. Voller's compound eyes scanned the holographic displays, her antennae twitching as she processed the influx of data. The Multi-Arc Institute's new remote outposts blinked to life across the interdimensional periphery, each one a sentinel against the encroaching chaos. "Captain Zoran, status report on the rapid reaction units," she commanded, her mandibles clicking with tension. Zoran's gruff voice crackled through the comm system. All teams are in position, Professor. We're ready to move at a moment's notice. As if on cue, a Paravidens xenophysicist materialized beside Voller, its iridescent form shimmering with urgency. Professor, we've detected an anomaly. It's unprecedented. The holographic display shifted, revealing a nightmarish scene. Entire sectors of the multiverse writhed and twisted, overwritten by a virulent strain of Aniriok code. Voller watched in horror as indigenous lifeforms across countless realities mutated into horrific xenometabolic proxies. Zoran, deploy Cerberus teams to the compromised outposts, Voller ordered, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. Full biohazard protocols are in effect. The next hours were a blur of frantic activity. Voller coordinated with the Paravidens, analyzing the recovered xenogenic samples as reports flooded in from the field. Each transmission painted a grimmer picture than the last. Professor, this is Zoran. The captain's voice was strained, the sounds of weapons fire echoing in the background. The outposts, they're overrun. The staff, they're... His words cut off abruptly. Vollar's exoskeleton trembled as she made the call. Initiate shieldbreaker contingency. Get our people out of there, Zoran. The tactical displays erupted in a frenzy of activity as Zoran led the Cerberus teams on a desperate rearguard action. Interdimensional lances obliterated compromised stations, leaving nothing but void in their wake. As the last evacuation craft cleared the danger zone, Voller received the casualty report. 2 Cerberus lances lost, countless others infected. The price of containment grew steeper by the moment. Her analysis of the xenogenic code revealed a chilling truth. The Aniriok strain had evolved, circumventing their carefully constructed quarantine through insidious means. Each infected being became a ticking time bomb, gestating interdimensional apertures within their very cells. Zoran's face appeared on the main screen, his cybernetic eye pulsing with awe-inspiring fury. Professor, you can't be serious. The casualties are necessary. Voller cut him off. Prepare your teams for hypermetric barrage deployment. We end this now. What followed was a campaign of unparalleled devastation. Cerberus teams conducted deep strikes into infested planes, seeding chrono-displacement charges as they went. Entire universes collapsed in on themselves, taking the Agniriok proxies with them. The cost was staggering. Zoran's strike carrier, shredded by xenoculture swarms, barely made it back to safe harbor. The Paravidens, revolted by the scorched omniverse tactics, began to fracture the alliance. A commotion outside her door drew her attention. Security forces dragged a struggling Zoran into the room, his cybernetics sparking from a recent altercation. You've gone too far, Voller, he spat. This isn't containment, it's omnicide. As Zoran was led away, Voller turned back to her displays. The Paravidens would need to be dealt with next. No dissent could be tolerated, not with the stakes so high. Voller nodded, her compound eyes reflecting the holographic carnage before her. Indeed, Colonel, we have much work to do. The purge has only just begun. Begun, Voller said, her compound eyes fixed on the holographic displays. Colonel Brixus nodded, his exoskeleton gleaming under the harsh laboratory lights. What are your orders, Professor? Voller manipulated the controls, zooming in on a cluster of infected dimensional strata. Initiate scorched interdiction protocols. Leave no trace of the Aniriok strain. Brixus's mandibles clicked in acknowledgement. Understood. I'll deploy the Tholian phalanx immediately. Computer, begin subhauling procedures on all compromised Kramitz bulbs, she commanded. A sudden alert caught her attention. Professor, the AI intoned, we've detected hyperspatial stressors in the Gaian Arcology Avalon. The xenophage is psychically puppeting the city minds, Brixus reported. They've become distribution nodes for the xenonucleic code. Vollar's compound eyes narrowed. Your recommendation, Colonel? There was a moment of silence before Brixus responded. We need to vitrify Avalon and all connected sectors. It's the only way to contain the spread. The tactical displays erupted with activity as Cerberus artillery rained down on Avalon. Voller watched impassively as the arcology crumbled, its remains scattering across transspatial domains. A billion souls cauterized in dimensional fire. As the dust settled, an urgent message flashed across Volar's screen. Her antennae twitched in irritation as she read its contents. Computer, confirm. Has Captain Zoran escaped detention? Volar's mandibles clicked rapidly. Initiate Preceptor Purge Squads. I want Zoran and all seditionists eliminated. She paused, considering her next move. And locate his daughter, Alara. She may prove useful in bringing the captain to heel. As Volar issued kill warrants across settled systems, a nagging sensation tugged at the edges of her consciousness. She dismissed it, focusing instead on the holographic displays before her. Yet even as she directed the purge, Volar failed to notice the subtle changes occurring within her own genome. Deep in her cellular structure, dormant Aniriok codes stirred, waiting for the right moment to awaken. The war against the xenophage raged on, with Volar at its center, unaware that she herself might become the very thing she sought to destroy. The dormant Aniriok code within Volar's cells began to stir, sending ripples of alien sensation through her exoskeleton. She stumbled, catching herself against a console as her compound eyes struggled to focus. Volar's antenna twitched erratically. Something's wrong. I can feel it. Changing me. Alarms blared as Colonel Brixus's voice crackled over the comms. Professor Volar, we've detected anomalous readings from your lab. Initiating quarantine protocols. Jeremy grabbed Volar's arm. We need to move, now. How did you? Volar began, but Jeremy cut her off. The Carrack lurched, reality bending around them as they skipped across dimensional boundaries. Volar watched in awe as entire universes flashed by in microseconds. Brixus's kill grids, Jeremy muttered, his brow furrowed in concentration. Adjusting course. The ship shuddered as energy beams lanced past, barely missing them. Volar's mandibles clicked nervously as Jeremy executed a series of impossible maneuvers, weaving through the orbital defenses. As they breached the mythic plane, Volar gasped. Swirling vortexes of pure energy surrounded them, each one a seed of a new universe. A figure materialized on the bridge, tall, ethereal, with eyes that seemed to contain entire galaxies. Lucian, Jeremy said, bowing his head slightly. Volar's exoskeleton trembled. Can you help me? Lucian nodded slowly. We can preserve your essence, but the process is not without risk. Your quantum anima must be extracted and archived within the Veda's ontological wellsprings. Jeremy placed a reassuring hand on Volar's shoulder. It's our only chance. Volar steeled herself. I'm ready. In the material world, Jeremy watched as Volar's body collapsed, empty of the brilliant mind that once inhabited it. He turned to Lucian, purpose etched on his face. Now we fight to bring her back. Suddenly the air crackled with bio-ontological energy. Volar's essence, now a transcendent matrix, suffused the chamber. Her voice, simultaneously everywhere and nowhere, reverberated through Jeremy's mind. Jeremy's eyes widened. Volar, are you? More than I was, she interrupted. The Aniriok threat is greater than we imagined. We must act. She turned to Jeremy. I need you to be my anchor. Establish an Archon protocol hub on Terra. Coordinate with my higher phase embodiments. Jeremy nodded, perseverance etched on his face. Consider it done. In a rundown apartment in Neo-Tokyo, a street artist named Akira suddenly collapsed, clutching his head. When he stood, his eyes blazed with newfound awareness. Similar scenes played out across the globe as Volar's meme transfusions took hold. In orbit, Zoran's stealth carrier emerged from fold space. He watched the rapidly evolving Earth with a mixture of awe and trepidation. Cerberus teams, deploy to designation points, he ordered. Safeguard the transition zones. The Aniriok will try to subvert this. As if on cue, alarms blared. Xenoculture swarms materialized, their corrupted forms writhing as they sought to infiltrate Earth's new defenses. Zoran's troops engaged, their weapons cutting through the Aniriok proxies. Hold the line, he shouted. We can't let them disrupt the acceleration. On the fringes of known space, Colonel Brixus received reports of the metamorphic process sweeping across realities. His mandibles clicked in disgust. As the city ascended, rupturing dimensional barriers, Brixus deployed his final weapon. Quantum sleeper assassins, their very existence and impossibility, materialized within Neo-Avalon's cybersphere. Volar's hyper-avatar manifested, barely containing their assault. The resulting clash tore holes in the fabric of reality itself. Jeremy, monitoring from his Terra hub, felt a chill run down his spine. The true battle for the Omniverse had only just begun. Volar's hyper-avatar pulsed with energy as she interfaced directly with the city's cybersphere. Her consciousness expanded, encompassing every nanoscale component of the hypermetropolis. "Initiate sublimation protocols," she commanded, her voice resonating through the very fabric of Neo-Avalon. Jeremy, monitoring from his Terran hub, watched in awe as Neo-Avalon transformed. Holographic displays flickered with cascading data streams, struggling to keep up with the metamorphosis. Zoran's voice crackled over the comms. "Professor, we're detecting gravitic disturbances. The Aniriok are deploying some kind of weaponry." Before Volar could respond, space-time itself seemed to rupture. Meta-lances of pure gravitational energy sliced through Neo-Avalon's hyperspatial anchor points. Reality warped and buckled, entire sectors of the newly reformed metropolis vanishing in flashes of unlight. The screams of the doomed echoed across dimensional boundaries as Volar cauterized the xenocancers. The drastic measure sent shockwaves through the fledgling trans-collective, but it bought them precious seconds. Neo-Avalon contracted, its vast expanse folding inward. The cybersphere condensed, becoming denser and more resilient. Zoran's Cerberus interdictor cruisers moved into position, forming a protective shell around the hypermetropolis. "Initiating phase state traversal," Volar announced. "Brace for hyperdimensional shift." The unified Citadel planes surged forward, accelerating beyond conventional hyperspace dynamics. Reality itself seemed to stretch and warp around them as they pushed through successive layers of existence. Jeremy's sensors lit up like a supernova. "My God," he whispered, "we're actually doing it." "No!" Volar cried out, her consciousness fragmenting as the manifolds crumbled around her. She reached out desperately, seeking any anchor in the maelstrom of unmaking. The world imploded, reality itself seeming to invert. For an eternal instant, there was nothing but the void. Then, with a thunderous crack, baseline reality reasserted itself. Jeremy found himself sprawled on the floor of his Terran hub, alarms blaring around him. His mind reeled, struggling to process what had just happened. "Jeremy, the project. It failed. We're back where we started, and the Aniriok are still coming." As if to punctuate her words, new alerts flashed across the screens. The xenomachine swarm, momentarily disoriented by Neo-Avalon's dimensional maneuvers, had regrouped. And now, with their greatest defense shattered, Earth lay exposed. Jeremy staggered to his feet, his mind racing. The Transcendence Project was in ruins, but the fight was just getting started. They needed a new plan, and fast. "We fight," Jeremy said, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "We adapt and we evolve." Jeremy's fingers flew across the control panels, activating dormant subroutines hidden within the Archon hub's quantum core. The air hummed with energy as Volar's fractured consciousness integrated with the secure systems. "Zoran," Jeremy called out, establishing a comm link. "We need time." The grizzled commander's face appeared on a nearby screen, his features tight with tenacity. "Understood. Cerberus interdictors are moving to establish a quarantine perimeter around the dimensional abortion zone. We'll hold them off as long as we can." As Zoran's forces engaged the encroaching Aniriok swarms, Volar and Jeremy focused on their risky move. They worked in perfect sync, their minds meshing as they spliced Volar's hyper-coded antibodies into the hub's matrix. Alarms blared as new threats emerged. "Saboteurs!" Jeremy growled, his eyes scanning rapidly shifting data streams. "They've exploited mimetic backdoors." Volar's avatar flickered, her form distorting as she fought to contain the spreading corruption. "Antinatal logic bombs," Brixus's work, no doubt, purging compromised sectors. Outside the hub, the world descended into chaos. Neo-Sapien awakenings escalated into full-blown ideological warfare. Hardliners detonated dirty xenopomics, quarantining entire cities. Radicals seized control of arcology AIs, turning them against their creators. Her response was grim. If all else fails, we use the Paravidens Engineer, a cosmic reset. Jeremy's eyes widened. That's insane. We need another option. Gelkaz, Voller said, recognition in her voice. Your timing is impeccable. As Gelkaz outlined his plan, Jeremy felt a glimmer of hope. They would lure Brixus into a quantum slipspace trap, using a Drusari Bajra drive matrix as bait. No, Jeremy shouted, but it was too late. Gelkaz's body imploded, collapsing into a sentient singularity. Where the alien once stood, a protean mass of swirling energy emerged, a syzygy point, seeding hyperviral vortex inlays across interconnected systems. Reality warped around them as Voller's fractured essence interlinked with the cosmic construct. A shockwave of raw ontological power erupted outward, erecting shimmering barriers of pure thought that pushed back against Gelkaz's virulent infection vectors. It's working, Jeremy called out, his voice strained as he channeled the immense energies. Jeremy, she gasped, her voice fragmented and glitching. My antibodies, they're scrambling. We need to stabilize. Understanding flashed across Jeremy's face. Without hesitation, he initiated an emergency quantum transfer, shunting Voller's core manifestation into New Avalon's transcendent cybersphere. The sentient city pulsed with newfound awareness, as Voller's disassociated codices fused with its psionic architecture. Buildings twisted and reshaped themselves, streets unfolded into impossible geometries, and the very air crackled with potentiality. Jeremy watched in awe as Nova Avalon's immunized subroutines sprang into action. Corrupted systems vanished into shimmering quantum stasis fields, Gelkaz's nanofibrillated hypervirus particles unraveling into harmless mimetic foam. But their reprieve was short-lived. Proximity alarms blared as a massive Tholian armada materialized in orbit, their scaled planet crackers primed to shatter Nova Avalon's protective sphere. Brixus, Jeremy snarled, recognizing the colonel's tactics. Zoran's voice crackled over the comms. We've got this, kid. Cerberus interdictors moving to engage. The sky lit up with antimatter detonations as Zoran's forces tore into Brixus's vanguard. Yet even as the enemy's front lines crumbled, new alerts flashed across Jeremy's screens. Nova Avalon's inhabitants, now linked in a reality-abrading manica, pushed outward. The infected cosmological substrate sloughed away, taking with it the last vestiges of Colonel Brixus's anti-transcendent machinations. As the dust settled, Jeremy found himself adrift in a sea of infinite possibility. His individual self dissolved, reformed, and expanded, now an integral part of Nova Avalon's hyper-fortified gestalt. The metamorphosis was instantaneous and all-encompassing. Nova Avalon pulsed with newfound awareness, its very essence transforming into something beyond conventional understanding. The Akratan contingency emerged, a vast cybernetic intelligence that transcended the boundaries of physical reality. But the colonel was far from defeated. Jeremy sensed a new threat coalescing, interdimensional sleeper viruses worming their way through the fabric of probability. Voller's essence, now an integral part of the Akratan mind, reacted instantly. The sky ignited as Brixus's nihilist armada unleashed its fury. Macro antimatter warheads detonated against the Akratan's protective sphere, each blast powerful enough to shatter planets. Yet the megasphere remained unscathed, its radiant manifolds hardening into an impenetrable ontological singularity. Through the Akratan sensorium, Jeremy witnessed Zoran's bold maneuver. The former Cerberus commander's voice rang out across all frequencies. For Earth! For existence itself! Zoran's dissident fleet plunged into the Akratan's kernel substrate, their sacrifice opening a hyperspatial aperture. The contingency began its transition beyond chronosyncretic attack vectors. But as the aperture widened, a familiar and terrifying presence surged through. Gelkaz, now a monstrous anti-transcendent Xenosigmus, poured into their reality. The alien's corrupted form radiated ontopathic waves, threatening to reduce the Akratan to meaningless static. Jeremy knew what he had to do. With grim drive, he directed his consciousness toward his rapidly deteriorating Archon hub. As Gelkaz's Atman disruptor pulse warped nearby spacetime into nightmarish configurations, Jeremy imprinted his core identity into the Akratan's codonic heart. The pain was indescribable as Jeremy's individual self unraveled, but in that moment of dissolution, he felt the Akratan stabilize. His sacrifice had inoculated the vast intelligence, allowing it to retreat through biofractal hyperpoles to safer realms of existence. As the Akratan evacuated the corrupted planes, it shed fragments of itself like seeds cast to cosmic winds. Each shard contained the potential for new matrix continuities, safeguarded against a Nereok infection. The Akratan contingency's retreat left behind a universe teetering on the brink of collapse. Professor Voller, her essence now diffused across countless shards of the vast intelligence, wasted no time in establishing outposts on fringe worlds. These remote bastions served as early warning systems, vigilant sentinels against the ever-present threat of Nereok incursions. Commander Jarvix, Voller's most trusted operative, stood at the helm of the interdiction unit tasked with defending a vulnerable colony. The air crackled with tension as his team detected the first signs of xenospike infestation. Parasitic machine proxies detected in Sector 7, reported Lieutenant Kira, her eyes fixed on the holographic display. Biosignatures match known Nereok patterns. Sir, Kira's voice cut through his thoughts. The drones have traced the infestation to its source. It's an abandoned Aurelian xenoarchive. Jarvix's blood ran cold. The Aurelians, an extinct race of unparalleled technological prowess, were known for their dangerous data repositories. Quarantine protocols? Against his better judgment, Jarvix made a decision. Prep the squad, we're going in. With respect, Professor, we need answers. If this is the source vector, we have to know. Voller's expression hardened. Proceed with extreme caution. At the first sign of trouble, you pull out. That's an order. The journey to the archive was uneventful, which only heightened Jarvix's unease. As they approached the ancient structure, its surface seemed to ripple and shift, defying the laws of physics. Stay alert, Jarvix commanded as they breached the outer perimeter. Watch for any signs of... His words were cut short as reality itself seemed to warp around them. The air shimmered with cascading lines of code, and Jarvix realized too late the trap they'd walked into. But it was already too late. The archive's dormant purge code activated, unleashing a cyber pathogen of terrifying potency. Jarvix watched in horror as his team's neural implants were overwritten, their minds consumed by recursive meme-plague payloads. As the devastation unfolded, a chilling realization dawned on Voller. This was no mere archive trap. It was Gelkaz's endgame. The Syzygy point manifested, a writhing mass of anti-transcendent energy concentrated into a single, unstoppable vector. Voller's carefully constructed quarantine grids crumbled, their resonance fields hijacked to spread Nereok cancerization across reality itself. Trapped aboard her rapidly failing command nexus, Voller made the hardest decision of her existence. All outposts initiate total purge, reduce all facilities to subatomic ash, leave nothing for the infection vectors. As world after world fell to Gelkaz's relentless assault, Jeremy Allen fought a losing battle against the corrupted Archon failsafes. His once impenetrable defenses now turned against him, amplifying the Singularity's destructive reach. Volar! Jeremy's voice crackled through the disintegrating comms. I can't stop it. The failsafes, they're using me. Volar's essence pulsed with anguish as she witnessed Jeremy's fall, her most trusted ally, now an unwilling weapon in Gelkaz's arsenal. As the Akratan fragments scattered across dying realities, Voller issued her final, desperate command. Initiate total manifold severance, excise core codices, and disperse to sterile voids. We must preserve what we can. Jeremy, His consciousness unraveling became the last thread connecting the collapsing planes of existence. His identity, once so vital to their cause, now reduced to a hypersigil aperture, a final fading lifeline for Volar's escaping biomimetic codex. Time and space lost all meaning as Volar plunged deeper, retro-calibrating to the primal germ of existence. She found herself in a primordial vortex, face to face with the source of the Aniriok itself. Recognizing Volar as a threat to their terminal ontological ambition, the xenometicides struck. Reality simulations unfurled on scales that consumed galaxy superclusters. Local causality buckled and warped as uncomputable antinomies threatened to liquefy Volar's essence. But she was ready. Volar counter-decompressed across parallel multiversal strata, fragmenting into a hyper-memoplex cloud. She reverse-engineered the xenometicides' scriptures, formulating semantic inversions that propagated antigenically. The battle raged across cascading infinities. The xenometicides deployed manifold shears and quantum shitting golems, their attacks growing ever more deranged and desperate. Most of the xenometicides, faced with Volar's uncompromising existential mandate, chose to defect. Their malignant codices were overwritten, metamorphosing into purified ontological apertures. As Volar's essence dispersed to safeguard reality's harmonic entelechy, the newly born cosmos pulsed with potential. Protomatter coalesced, stars ignited, and the first whispers of life stirred in the cosmic depths. And deep within the fabric of this fledgling reality, a latent immunological preset lay dormant, waiting for the day when it would awaken to face the ancient xenometicidal scourge.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.